we investigate mysteries of the unknown. This is Sigh Legends. Good day, and welcome to Legends. This is our first episode of Legends. You know, everybody likes a good ghost story from time to time, and I, like many, have been fascinated with tales of the strange and unknown for many, many years since I was a young boy. And back in 1974, my mother had purchased a book. It's one of my favorite books of the time, and it's a book called Oddities by Ripper T. Code. And in this book it told of strange tales, and one such tale that I would like to introduce to you today on Legends, and we're going to discuss a little bit of it afterwards. Our first story is about the devil's hoofprints. This happened over in England back in 1855, and the legend's a pretty strange one. So let's sit back and take a look at it, and then we'll talk about it afterwards. In 1855, Devonshire, England, had a strange and mysterious visitor one evening who traveled across its countryside. This is the legend of the devil's hoofprints. On the nights of the 8th and 9th of February 1855, and 1 or 2 nights thereafter, trails resembling those of a donkey were laid across large areas of Devon. They appeared in a shallow snow between half an inch to 4 inches deep, meandering through villages and gardens. Sometimes it was said they did impossible things such as crossing roofs, leaping tall walls, disappearing through small holes and hedges, or stopping dead on one side of a haystack, leaving its sides and tops undisturbed, and commencing abruptly once more on the other side. The trail itself was equally mysterious, and it was ubiquitous. There were villages where hardly a home had been visited, and the marks were reported from more than 30 locations across the county, as well as 1 or 2 in Dorset. If the tracks had been left by a single creature, it would have had to travel a distance variously estimated at between 40 and 100 miles in a single night. The marks, which were almost all 4 inches long by 3 broad, or rather smaller, appeared to have been left by a biped, although the prints were almost always in a single file, rather than alternating to the right or the left as most tracks do. Sometimes the prints appeared cloven, sometimes not, and the stride was tiny, almost menacing, at between 8 and 16 inches. The circumstances were unusual. Devon, and indeed much of Britain, was in the grip of an especially severe winter, one so fierce that the thermometer was 1 degree lower than has ever before been known by the oldest inhabitant, and the rivers Eve and Teg froze over for part of the length, allowing games and one occasion a feast to be held on the ice. Snow fell heavily at about midnight on the nights of the 8th through the 9th of February, but towards dawn the temperatures rose and there was rain. The thermometer then fell once more, and there was a frost at dawn. These are the circumstances in which trails and footprints can be considerably distorted by the processes of thawing and refreezing. But one local source asserted that many tracks left by common animals remained easily identifiable in the morning, and on the whole, it seems that a considerable majority of the inhabitants, most of whom were country people, who might have been expected to be familiar with all manner of trails left by the local wildlife, were puzzled, and in many cases scared by these tracks and by the places in which they were discovered. The first traceable report of the mystery which appeared on the 13th of February, 1855, mentions that some locals were already inclined to ascribe the hoof marks to a visit from the devil. The same article also gives the first of many less exotic solutions to the mystery, suggesting that the tracks may have been made by a monkey which escaped from some traveling zoo act or circus act. In coming weeks and years, it was variously proposed that the devil's hoof marks were made by the great bustard, heron, badger, mouse, rat, otter, swan, kangaroo, donkey, cat, wolf, and hare, or by flocks of birds. Within a few hours of the first discovery of the prints, a number of attempts were made to track down whatever had made them. A number of parties traced the prints for miles, finding no observable cause for whatever was making the prints. Could a donkey or some other type of animal possibly made these prints? And could they have made them in the track of one night of over 100 or some odd miles? And if it was the devil himself, the devil's just a fallen angel, which means he's a spirit. And he wouldn't likely have left footprints in the snow or hoof prints. And if he did leave hoof prints, why would they be shoed like a donkey or horses? That answer is yet to be revealed. Well, that was pretty interesting, to say the least. But let's go back and analyze what we just seen. I mean, if you think about it, back in 1855, there was no real photography of the event that took place. And, most of it was documented by newspapers and hearsay. And they also quoted that the footprints had went for an average of over 100 miles, that they tracked them. Now, I kind of find that hard to believe. If they first started out in the first town, to where once they started noticing these, this was a 3-day event that they tracked these, supposedly. And they would have had to done that by horse. Now, a horse on the average can travel up to 25 to 35 miles a day if you're riding horseback. So you figure one day, 35 miles as far as they tracked them. The next day, another 35 miles, that's 70 miles. And then the last day, I guess it's possible. They could have, it'd been over 100 miles. They could have went in a 3-day stint. But I find it kind of unlikely as the footsteps would, become distorted or even melted away, because it warmed up afterwards. So, that's just my take on it. What's your take? I'd like to know down in the comments if you wouldn't mind putting them down there. Plus, like I said, they could have been hoaxed just as easily. And back in, these little towns, they would have liked to have got their name in the paper, I'm sure. And one town could have heard it from the story from the next, and then the next. This was several search parties that went looking for these hoof prints. Now, as far as them going up the side of buildings and across roofs and stuff like that, that could be just a sensational twist that they added to the story. But I don't know. It's still an object of legend, and there's no way to prove or disprove this legend. So, if you would, please give me your thoughts in the comments, and let's go on to our next story, shall we? The next story comes from the same book, Oddities, and this is about the moving caskets of Barbados. When I was a small boy back in 1974, my mother had purchased me a book by the title of Oddities. It had such amazing stories in it, and one such story which intrigued me the most was the moving caskets in the Chase Vault at Barbados. Here is a little bit of insight into what that story was. The coastal town of Austin's Christchurch, Barbados, was a British colony where the main economy was tobacco and cotton. The Chase Vault at the Christchurch Parish Church in Austin's, Barbados was built by the Honorable James Elliot around 1724. The vault was a stone room with an arched roof and was built just below the ground and accessible only with stairs. It was over 12 feet deep and about 6 feet wide. There is some conflicting information from various sources, but it looks like Elliot was buried in 1784, and then his wife, Elizabeth, who died on May 14, 1792, was interred there as well, but there are also reports that Elliot never used the tomb, and only his wife was buried there. Then the tomb was brought by the Wolford family in 1807. A woman named Thomasina Goodard was buried in the Chase Vault. When the tomb was opened, it was discovered that the buried body of the Honorable James Elliot and his wife was missing. When the Honorable Thomas Chase purchased the vault, hence the name the Chase Vault, the body of Goodard was left in place. Here is where the story takes a very bizarre turn of events. On February the 22nd, 1808, the 2-year-old daughter of Chase, named Mary Ann Marie Chase, died, and she was buried in the lead coffin in the vault. When the vault was opened in 1812 for Dorcas Chase's other daughter, Mary Ann Marie's coffin was upside down and placed in the opposite corner from where it was placed previously. Circumstances around the death of Dorcas were questionable. Thomas was reportedly very abusive to his family and his slaves, and there are rumors that Dorcas starved herself to death. Thomas died about a month later after Dorcas, and he too was buried in the vault. It is rumored that Thomas committed suicide in September of 1816. The vault was opened once again for the burial of 11-month-old Samuel Brewster Ames, and all the coffins were in disorder. When the adult Samuel Brewster, who died from a bloody slave rebellion, was interred in the vault on November 16th of that same year, the coffins had moved again. In 1819, the vault was opened once again to accept the body of Thomasina Clark, who was in a wooden coffin. And the same thing happened again. What was going on? It was noted that after each opening of the vault, the coffins were put back in their original place, and the vault was sealed. Clark was the last body to be interned in the tomb. The situation had become such a problem that Sir Stapleton Cotton, the Baron Culberman and governor of Barbados, wanted to conduct an investigation. Even the floor was sanded so footprints could be detected in case someone was breaking into the vault, but there was never any trace of an intruder. The vault was inspected for secret passageways, and nothing was found. The vault was closed once more, with the plan to open it later to check and see if the coffins had moved again. The marble slab closing off the vault was cemented in place, and the government officials put their seal on the cement, including the governor. The vault was opened once more in 1820. From the outside, nothing was disturbed, and the seals from the government officials were still in place. Once the vault was opened, the sand was undisturbed. Basically, everything was undisturbed, except for the coffins. According to witnesses, the coffins looked like they were thrown around, and Mary Ann's coffin was reportedly damaged and chipped. The Chase family had enough and took the bodies and moved them. The Chase Vault remains empty to this day and has for nearly 200 years. Early accounts of this story seem to come from Thomas H. Orderson, who was the rector of Christ Church during the 1800s. Eleanor Day Jaley said in her letter that many people had been inclined to attribute them to poltergeists or other supernatural agencies. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the author of the famed Sherlock Holmes series, hypothesized that because Thomas and Dorcas committed suicide, that their bodies were cursed and they were to blame for the movement of the coffins. There are also beliefs that the limestone in the ground, combined with the spiritual history of Barbados, plus the fact that the area was a British colony, that there were angry spirits moving, and unsettling the vault. One of the biggest explanations for the moving coffins has been flooding, but buoyancy with coffins is very tricky, as it would require a lot of water to make the coffins move. The average casket today weighs about 300 pounds, and 6 pallbearers to carry it. Thomas Chase's casket needed about 8 men to move, which means his coffin weighed more than the average coffin today and was made of lead. The vault also sits on an elevation of about 108 feet and was built on coral reef limestone, which can be porous. This means that if it rained, then the water in the vault would drain out into the ground. Earthquakes were offered as an explanation as well, but there were no major earthquakes reported between 1812 to 1820. Plus, Barbados is not known for active seismic activity in the time past. So what's your take of the story of the moving coffins at Barbados? Is this a historical event that really took place, or is it mere legend? The problem with the story is that it's handed down through word of mouth in third generation, and so we do know that there is records, church records, that show the existence of these people that's in the story, but what we don't know for sure is if any of them ever were put in the vault to begin with. So it's kind of a thing where you make up your own mind. As I said before, this story intrigued me as a young child, and for 46 years now, and I hope that you enjoyed this short rendition of it. I'm sure the story goes in more and more detail, but I've forgotten a lot of the story since. And until next time, let's keep it real, and we'll see y'all on the next hunt. So what do you think happened in Barbados in the Chase Vault? I've got some theories of my own on it. And again, this is another case, another legend which can't be proved or disproved. And after all, it was investigated by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the guy who penned all of the Sherlock Holmes series. He was a brilliant mind. But you also got to remember, in real life, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle also believed that Houdini, the famous escape artist, magician, he also believed that he had legitimate supernatural powers too. So, you know, this story has a lot of different twists and a lot of different things could be going on with it here. And who's to say that the people didn't go in after dark and break into the vault and move things around and smooth the sand out on the floor? Because before Sir Arthur Conan Doyle even got there to help with the investigation, it would have took him a while to get there. They had ample time to get in there and make everything a disarray and then smooth it out again and reseal it and even put the seal on the seal. But that's just a speculation. We don't know that for sure. And we probably never will, because it happened so long ago. There was no photographs of the actual caskets being tossed about. And who knows? But anyway, I'd like to hear your comments on this. Please drop us some comments. And thank you for sitting with me today, going through these stories. And we'll see you next time on Legends.